Hi, I'm Wendy. Welcome to the YouTube channel and this beautiful peach painting. So we're painting a little peach branch with some flowers and stuff. We are only using the primary colors, so red, yellow, and blue, plus black and white, and I'm using Liquitex Basics. You only need 3 paintbrushes, about anywhere from a 1 to 2 inch flat brush, about a 1/2 inch flat brush, and then a small round brush. Those are the only brushes you need. Today I'm painting on a 9x12 panel canvas, but I often use the 8x10 Raptor panel canvas as a size. So any rectangle size is going to do just fine for this. And I want you to get your supplies and paint along. Don't just watch the video. I know it's fun to watch a painting come together, but I also think that the whole reason that I'm doing this is to get you to paint, to inspire you to actually do it and create more. So the more you create, the better you're going to feel. That's usually the way that it works for me. So I hope you paint along and let's do it. All right, so my first brush I'm going to use is the large square brush. Again, it can be anywhere from a 1 inch flat to a 2 inch flat. I'm using 2 inch just to get it faster. I'm going to get my brush a little bit wet. And again, you can practice brushing the canvas with a little bit of water just to get some moisture on there. We have those primary colors with the Liquitex Basics. And again, blue, red, yellow is primaries, and then we have the black and white. We're going to do some peaches. And this is going to be really simple. We're going to make it so simple. Now I'm going to get a little base background color here. I'm going to do we're going to do purple. So I'm going to do red and blue about 50-50. And then what I'm going to do is just brush the corners vertically. And there's just a little bit on the bottom and top. Now, if I use more red, it's going to look a little warmer, more like a plum purple. So see how that looks a little warmer? And if I use more blue, it's going to look more cool, like a cool blue, or like a really bluish purple. So you can play around. And then once I get the middle filled, so you can pull a little bit around the sides and all of that, what I'm going to do is add a bunch of white to my brush and maybe even mix in a little bit of water to make it go a little easier. Don't wait too long to do this though, because then this will dry and it won't blend as well. And then I'm just going to brush up and down and all the way into the darker color so that it blends. See, I'm pulling the brush all the way through. And then so see how that looks so different than this side. You gotta add that. And again, I'm adding a lot of white into the purple. So it's still a little bit of a purple shade. It's not like pure white, but it's definitely much lighter than the shades that I put around the edge. But what this does is it just helps you get a little bit of a darker color around the edges and a lighter color through the center. And it gives you some different shades without very much effort. So if you spread around that darker color first and then pop in your lighter color, this is just a fun way to do a background. And I'm brushing it all the way through. And you can put this on any way you want, really, though. You know, I like to give ideas, but I also like to remind you that you can do how you want to do. And if you want to avoid seeing any brush marks through the middle of the canvas, just run the brush all the way from top to bottom and smooth it out a bit. So now I have a good coverage. And notice I have, it's like a little bit different colors here and there. That's fun. Now, if you want it more of a flat color, just keep rubbing until it looks like a flat color. I'm going to leave it like this though, and I'm going to blow dry it before I layer on top. All right, so this is pretty dry. And now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and use a medium flat brush. This is a 1/2 inch flat brush. Also, something similar would be a number 6 bright. So that's what I'm going to use. And again, we're going to do a peach branch thing going on. And I want kind of a brown color. But before I put the brown for the branch, I'm going to just lay out where the peach shapes are going to go. And we're just going to start with the peach color. So peach is easy. You're just mixing yellow and red plus a lot of white for a peach color. And we will make different shades, but I'm going to start with this color. And then I'm going to put one towards the center. So maybe I have the middle of my canvas right here. So I find the middle. I'm like, all right, there's the middle. I'm going to put one hanging right in that space. I'm going to make it kind of big. I'm do kind of an up close. But again, just like any fruit, you know, there's different sizes. And just get a base coat. And it's very much like a circle. You can give it kind of a little point if you want to. Sometimes peaches have like a little, kind of a little point to it, almost like a, kind of like a heart shape. It's subtle. All right, so I got one peach down. Maybe I add a little more red into my mix. Doop. And then we'll get another one over here. This one will be kind of close here. Notice I can go like this. Just watch how I make this little shape. So see how I pulled it in and then I have a like C shape coming out of the edge. This will be fun to create a shape like that because it's going to give you, again, like really similar to the shape of the peach. And then the way I can color it in is add a little more yellow to my peach and color that in on this side. So see how I'm already just playing with the colors and then add a little more red and fill in the other side. So you're differentiating the little shape here using the different shades of color. And we're going to add so many layers to this. So and then I'm just going to sort of mix all that together and do another one over here. And I'm just going to do 3 peaches. But again, maybe I add some more of like a yellowy color to this side, and then down below, maybe I add a little bit more of a reddish color. And this one I left really flat, but we will add more shades to that one too, so don't worry about it. And then we're gonna add a branch. So for the fun of it, we're just gonna leave this peach on the brush, and then I'm going to add more red and more yellow and a bit of black. And it's going to give us a brown. And I did have white on there, and that's good because I want kind of, I don't want it to be too dark of a brown at first. But if you want it darker, just add a little more black. And if you want it softer and more brown, add more yellow and red. So you can play around until you like what you're seeing here. And the branch is going to go right in between, coming from the upper right hand corner and just wiggling through this space, coming all the way down to the left corner here. And then maybe I have a thing coming like that and maybe coming like that. I think I'm just playing. I have one that goes around the peach over here. Play with your little branches. You can kind of wiggle the brush, let it look kind of crazy. And then, you know, you have a branch that comes to the peach itself. So this, maybe this branch connects up here, and then we have this one just coming right in here. Now we have the peach connected to the branch. And I'm thinking, that's good. We're going to just leave it like that. I don't want to do too many branches. And we'll add some leaves. So for the leaves, I do sometimes, I kind of like prefer using a round brush for leaves a lot of times, just because it's easier to get some details in there. And for our leaves, we're going to be going with a green. And I want kind of a blue-green for this. So I'm going to go heavy on the blue with just a little bit of yellow. Very heavy on the blue and a touch of white. This is like this kind of cool green that I want to use right now. We're going to go ahead and add a leaf right here. So I'm going to just make kind of a curve shape right there. And then I'm going to put like a little jagged line on either side. So just kind of make it jagged. That's what you can just sort of wiggle the brush, give it some texture. Maybe I have a leaf over here that's similar. So you have, just kind of wiggle the brush, give it some fun texture. And I'm just outlining the shape to begin with. So we have the line and then the arced lines that go on either side of the line. And you can have some that are skinnier. Maybe you're only seeing like at the side of the leaf, not like the full-fledged view. So that could look a little different. I'm like deciding. Yeah, I can add more later. I really want to see one here though. I'm just going to put one on right in this space. And then I'm going to add a little more white to fill in the leaves. I'm going to leave the darker edge though showing. And so we'll do that as our base coat. And then we'll paint our little flowers. So the flowers are, we can do some buds, and then we can do like maybe I'll do a couple of buds and then a couple of open flowers for the peach. Now that's going to look like, we'll put a bud down here. Those are going to be like more of a pink color, like a light pink. So it's mostly white and red. And then I'll go down here and I'm just going to make a little circle bud. Like that. Kind of big. Maybe I'll do another one here that's a little smaller. And then maybe we have like a flower right here. So I'm going to go ahead and make little petals that come together like that. So it's almost like a little ball still. So don't feel like you have to make it too detailed. And then this one I'll do a little bigger. Right over here, I'll make a little bit of a bigger one. So we'll go in and I'm just deciding and put it, I kind of want to put it over here, but maybe I'll just put it like right here. So we'll do that. So here's the center, and then we're going to make little circles, little ovals coming out. And that's going to be our little shape. We'll add another one here. Maybe I have another little bud right here. Maybe there. I don't know. You know, you get to make these decisions. It's the fun thing about painting. You don't have to, you know, you can just be like, that's where I want it, and there we go. That's what's happening. So now we have the base colors for everything. We can go in and add a little bit more to the peaches, then we'll do more to the branch, we'll do more to the leaves and the flowers. So we're just sort of working through. I usually just work through one layer and then go back through with another. So for the peaches, let's go in. We're gonna take some yellow. My yellow is kind of got a little ick with some of the blue. Really like low on yellow over here. So I'm going to get some white and yellow. I want it to be really light though, so it's like a lot of white, a lot of white. This is soft, soft, soft yellow. And then I can just wiggle that in there. So see, I can just wiggle it in. A little more bright yellow right here. Just wiggle some of that in. And we'll put a little more right here and wiggle that in. So now it's looking a little brighter in those spots. And then what you can do is just clean your brush, dry it off, and then go around the edges of that color and blend it out a bit. So if you feel like it got a little too harsh, this is the fun of painting, is you can always just blend things out with a clean, dry brush. And you can paint back over them with your other colors. So just wherever you want to see that like light color. And that could be different for everybody. Peaches have kind of a fun marbling kind of thing going on. But then I can go back to more of a pinkish color or like a reddish pink or reddish peach color, or even like a reddish orangish pinkish kind of thing. So, you can play, you're just playing with red, yellow, and white. That's all I'm doing here. Not anything crazy. And I want it a little darker around. I'm getting more red right where the stem touches the peach. So just put a little oomph right there for where you could see that. You don't really see this one too much up here, but you can add a little something. And then you can do a little dividing on that little shape. Maybe a little outlining with that color. Maybe this side of the peach is a little darker with that red color. I'm just sort of swirling it in. Almost like a tie-dye kind of thing going on. You want all these like fun colors marbled together and then kind of blend them out so they don't look too overpowering. And I can even take some of that reddish color and add it to these little blossoms. So just add like a layer to them. It'd be good to do. And then if you want to experiment with like the round or the flat brush, the medium flat brush, you can always take the medium flat brush and maybe I go in with just more like basic peach and just come in and kind of soften some of the colors we just added. So maybe that yellow got a little harsh, just sort of really lightly. You don't need to use a ton, but you can soften the color with the peach, which is just the first color we used. So you don't need to feel like, oh, that got too crazy. Now it looks like this one looks, I blended it a bit and it looks a little more mellow. So that first shade that we used is going to be your friend in toning down those darker and lighter shades of yellow and more of that reddish color. And it's going to make your peach look brighter just because you have, and I'm barely using any paint and I'm just feathering it in so that it's not like I'm completely covering over those other colors. You don't want to do that. You just want to soften them a bit so that it doesn't look a little more natural. Even though a style could be to make it look kind of, a little more strong. And that's okay too. And I can even just take some white in my brush and put a little bit of that on there. like just barely dusting a little bit of white on there. So soft, but we do want to see that because peaches have that kind of peach fuzz, and this white is going to help make it look kind of fuzzy. I'm just barely dusting some white on, not everywhere, just in a few spots to give it that dusty, fuzzy look. Oh, you could go on and on forever with doing this kind of stuff, but don't overdo it. See, I'm gonna put it up here, maybe put a little bit through here. You don't want to overdo it because then it's just gonna start to work against you, so be careful. Now I'm gonna go back to the round brush and I'm gonna do some more stuff on the flowers. I just want to use a little bit of like a red with a little bit of blue. Yeah, that's gonna give us like almost like a burgundy red. And I'm going to bring that down at the base of the buds and just sort of put a little outline around the bottom of the bud where it touches the branch. And then for the flowers that are open like that, you can just put a dab of that in the center. And you can even kind of outline the leaves a little bit like that, just so you can just go in and kind of outline them. Just like that. You're just going in and painting a little very light coming from the center through where the petals come together. It's so soft. Do not overanalyze. This happens. Don't do it. And then I can add like, I'm adding a little more red to it to soften it and maybe even add a little bit of white. And then you can go in and kind of soften, come from the center and pull out just a little bit and add a little more shading. And then you can come in with like a really light shade of pink, just red and a bunch of white, and go in between, reestablish. Everything takes many layers to come together because then you're getting all those shades. So don't stress about if you didn't get it right in this moment. You can always go back and paint more. You know, you can repaint and do all these fun things. Let's do a little bit more on the leaves. Now the leaves, we could just pull in more white and more yellow. And then I can go in and I can do things like make little lines on the leaves. Things like that. You don't have to, but you can. So it's fun. And you can do this with a darker shade too. So I am doing a lighter shade right this second because I like to have as many shades as possible and shooting for a minimum of 3. So if notice how I put a touch of that light shade on there. You can always clean your brush and go in and do a darker shade. So that darker shade could look like blue with a touch of yellow and add black. And that can be really, really dark, a very dark shade there. Again, I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow to it. It's gonna be like a very dark blue-green. And I'm just rolling the brush in there to get a nice good tip on it. But then, you know, maybe that comes through and I do some outlining. on, notice I just put some outlining on this leaf. You gotta have like sort of extreme darks and lights. If you don't, your painting will look really flat and boring and just flat. You know, that's kind of the goal of painting, is to give your painting more depth. So if you have too few dark and light, you're gonna run into that issue of your painting just looking really flat and uninteresting. So we want to make sure we add really dark colors and really bright colors, and then as many in between. This makes everything stand out more. And you can get as so detailed with this with like a tiny brush and get all these like really intricate little lines and however you want to do it. But again, like I like to keep it really loose and simple. That way it's not so intimidating if you're just learning. You can still get the gist of it. You can still get the idea without feeling overwhelmed. And then we want to add a little bit more to the branch too. So the branch, we want to add a little more white to the brown that we made for the branch. So just grab some more white. And then you can go towards the top of the branch and just dust in. And you can even like paw it down like little stripes. So fun. And if you need more dark brown, just add more black to your brown. And you can go on the opposite side and give a little bit of a punch to the bottom side of the branch. So we did the mid-tone, and then you want to get in like a dark and a light for the branch to have at least 3 shades. And you can keep it just 3 shades, that's totally fine, or you can take it further. But notice I can put that dark brown right where the stem comes into the peach. Can't really see it right there. Can add a little more to the base of the little blossoms. Whatever needs to happen. And then again, you can always blend out, which just means you can go back to like your original brown color. I like to show this just because sometimes people go in and do their shadows and highlights and then they're like, oops, now I don't see my base color. Then you just come back in with like that medium brown and soften. You can soften the shadows and the highlights if you need to. So if anything looks a little too harsh or too much, soften it with that mid shade again. And it's even ends up working in your favor if you have to do something like that, because it gives you more shades. The more the merrier. But make sure you can see the light, the dark, the medium. You want to see all these shades. And if you, again, you might need to go back and forth a little bit just to ensure that you didn't get too crazy and cover anything up too much. Now let's do a little bit more on the flowers and then I'm going to call it done. Because again, I'm keeping it really simple. I don't want to make it too complicated. Now the flowers are fun because we can have some little like orangish yellow dots in there. And I'm going to go ahead and use yellow with white and a touch of red. But I still want it pretty light. And then what I can do is go in the middle and just put some dots of yellow like that coming out. And notice how when you mix your paint, your brush gets all super just big and puffy. Just roll it out. Sometimes you have to like clean it and then roll it out. And we'll do some in here. And if you're struggling with getting little tiny dots, you can even use a pencil or a toothpick. Just get your pencil paint in there and go in and use it to make little dots. The pencil won't go on there. The paint is going to be the thing that goes on. So say I can just take a pencil and poke. So sometimes you might want to do that. So if you're struggling with your brush, do not struggle. Use a toothpick, use a pencil that you can just sharpen it or wipe the paint off before it dries. And then you can just resharpen it and it's fine. You can even do some pure white. And then last but not least, you can do a few more white highlights on your painting using like the small round brush or something like that. Maybe I get just a little more white on the tips of some of those petals of the flower. Or the buds. Or you can get a little bit more of that on the peaches, or you can do more on the, maybe I want like more of a yellowish shade of green on some of the leaves. Spread it around though. If you add a completely different shade, spread it about. You don't want to just put it on one spot. Otherwise it looks kind of weird if it's just one spot. All right, that's it. I'm gonna let it go because I like my videos to be around 30 minutes. And if it goes way longer than that, sometimes it feels too intimidating. So I don't want to intimidate. You can make a fun little peach branch, 30 minutes, you're good to go. Leave me a comment. Let me know what other fun things you'd like to paint. And I hope you painted along and enjoyed yourself and have a beautiful rest of your day.